Hello, everyone. Did that wake you up, that big pulsating vibe that we have in our intro video? I am delighted to be joined here today by the amazing Val Quinn, who's got up super early in Ireland to come and talk to us about her new release, Create Your Best Life. Welcome, Val.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, a little early this side of the world, but delighted to be on. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is where you're dialing in from.
Yes. And that's the thing, whenever you're global, there's always somebody who has to hit the early shift, isn't it?
Yeah. It's good to
So
start
Val,
the day early.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's on the best note, and my music will wake you up no end. So there you go. It'll get your blood pumping. Thank you so much, though, for getting up and joining me, and honestly, for showing up for this book. It's been a journey. It's been a really fun journey working with you. I love how you honor the process. I love how you manage all of 42 authors, guys. 42, and she did it just seamlessly. That's her management qualities coming out there. But this book, Create Your Best Life, can you just share with everyone why you're passionate about this book?
Well, it came about actually because I was working with Coca-Cola for 17 years, and there was an opportunity for voluntary redundancy. And I loved the business, but a year previously, I had gone blind myself in my right eye. And I'd had an operation. I was blind because it was during COVID time. So I'd gone blind and I had to wait a week for an operation. And thankfully, they were able to restore the sight of my eye. But then I had a review a few months later in terms of my eyesight. And they said that, look, you're going to need future operations. I have problems with my retinas in both eyes. And therefore, they said, look, there is a small chance that you could go blind, and not in just one eye, but in both eyes. At the very same time, then, Coca-Cola announced that they were having a voluntary redundancy program. And I thought, gosh, I walked out of the INR, the emergency room that day with the news, having had my eyes reviewed. And on one hand, I had a bag of cash, and the other hand, I had, look, you could possibly be going blind. And that was my aha moment, I guess, for want of a better word, which was, look, I need to do something else. So that's when I applied for the voluntary redundancy and left. And then literally the process was quite quick. So I left in the end of February 21. So it's exactly 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
And, I was working very hard and long hours, and suddenly that was on the Friday. And then the Monday I get up and poof, you're done. And I was like, wow, okay, what'll I do now? So I'm having my cup of coffee and I'm scribbling on a piece of paper. I tend to be a real writer, and I'm scribbling away, and I thought, loads of people must face into this, as in a life change or something. The universe provides something, whether it's a positive opportunity or just a change or a swerve ball that you didn't necessarily anticipate. I certainly didn't anticipate going blind in my right eye. I mean, at the time I was running down the road, and literally 1 minute later, I got this big blood clot across my eye, and then I was blind. I mean, there was zero pain, thankfully. But so things happen to us that we just don't anticipate. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, I'm going to maybe write about my experiences throughout my life and the opportunities I've had, the challenges I've had. What have I done? What's the process that I've gone through to decide my next step? And I thought it would be interesting in terms of what's my process now to decide going forward. And then I thought, well, because I'm in the middle of the process, that mightn't fill a book. So friends of mine always say, Val, you're a great delegator. So I thought, right, I'll just get everybody else to write the book. So in the following number of months, I started talking to people saying, do you think this? And because also it was post-COVID, when people actually had started to think about themselves, reflect and review what they wanted out of life, I think that's one positive out of COVID. It helped people to reflect on what they want and how do they spend their day, and are they spending an hour commuting to work, an hour back from work, whatever it may be. What way do they want to spend time with family and friends? Do they want to hike more? Do they want to draw more? Do they want to sing more? So I started talking to people, and people said, yeah, that's an interesting concept. I think it would work. And literally then I was about to do it, and I went over to visit my mum, who lives about 7-8 miles away from me, about 10 kilometers. And she said, sit down there now, I want to talk to you. And I thought, my gosh, this has never happened before, you know. And she had found a lump in her breast, and she said, will you come with me? And it ended up that my mum had breast cancer. So I ended up becoming, the universe is funny how it provides, because I would have had to take a year off work anyway in order to support her and care for her. So I took a year of looking after my mum, basically. And she was in that hospital. She nearly died in the July of that year. And thankfully, she survived, which was great. And she moved back to live independently then, the following end of January of 22. And then I sat down again and thought, right, I'm going to revisit this book. So I sat down and I really started to take it a little bit more seriously. And I'm not an author. I have never written something before. I've got something in an academic paper and I've written a little article, but I've never published a book. I've no idea the process. I know I probably drive you mad, Karen, in the sense of like a million questions every day, like what is, because I just didn't know. So it was definitely a learning journey for me. And also in terms of, you've talked about the 42 contributors. So we've got 42 contributors, 9 different countries from around the world, which is amazing. And mixture of male and female. And out of the 42, I think 3 people may have written something before. And other than that, everybody is a virgin voyage in the sense of writing their story. What was important about that for me was when I talked to people and I asked them, here's my vision, here's what I want to do. I want to try and inspire people who may feel slightly stuck in life or have a challenge, or the universe has provided something and they're not quite sure where to go. So I don't think this will be a book that you read from beginning to end. I think it'll be a book that you pick it up, you read a chapter and you think, I can really relate to that person. And what did they do? Wow, that's my situation. Gosh, I never thought of that. And that hopefully it will inspire people. Out of the other chapters, you may start and go, well, that's an interesting story. I don't really relate to it, but it's just interesting. And for another chapter, you might start and go, well, that's not for me. And that's absolutely fine, because this is the sort of book that I think you can dip in and out of. And no matter your age, you know, you could be facing into retirement. You've got Bevan Mahon's mum, Mary Mahon. She's written a chapter in the retirement section. She talks about she left school at 13. Then she started working, helping out with her family. And she went back to do a degree. She actually did her leaving cert, what's called a leaving cert, to qualify to get into college in Ireland. She went back and did that in her late 30s and early 40s when she went to college. And then she became she did a creative writing class, which she absolutely loved. And she's included a little bit of her poetry in the book, which I just think is fabulous. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who say, oh yeah, I don't know what I want to do, or I'm in, you know, my late 30s, early 40s, what am I doing? And they talk about their stories. And it's not just business women, businessmen. This is people who, for example, one lady's an English lady. I met her. It's interesting, the conversations and where I met people. I met the lady, Sue, when I stayed in a B&B down in Westport in west of Ireland. And we got chatting over my morning coffee in the B&B. And she started telling me how she was a croupier on boats and how she traveled the world, and started telling me, she just recounted these stories. She has definitely got a book in her herself. But she starts talking about it being a croupier and how she travels the world. And I just thought, that's amazing. So she didn't know where life was going to take her. She traveled the world. She got to meet so many people. She trained herself in massage and holistic therapy. And now she's a carer as well down the west for the elderly. So she's just reimagined her life. And she shared that. So there's not just one dimension. There's no one path that's right for all of us. And we can't necessarily envision it. It just comes along. So we can plan, but equally there needs to be flexibility within our plan, because life happens. And so throughout the book, you know, we've got people, for example, Wendy Hammer, she's an actress in LA. She ended up getting pancreatic cancer, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And she ended up lying on her back for one whole year, looking at the ceiling, saying, what's the lesson in this for me? And She survived, which is against the odds. Her dad unfortunately died. He had cancer of a different type at the same time. He passed, should have lived. She lived, should have probably, could have died. And so she now is a speaker. She speaks on stage. She's a motivational speaker. And one of her topics is, how did I break up with cancer? And she makes it funny because she's actually a comedian in LA. She's a stand-up. So she also tells stories, and she is one of the people who has written before. So that's, I think, a lovely story. But you've just got this.
I love the diversity of people. Like, they're just people from all over the world with all a different array of stories, but they're people from your circle. The common denominator is you. You're connected to them.
Yes, I'm connected to them. Some of them freshly connected because, like I said, I just met Sue in a B&B, and Wendy was introduced to me by Amy Friedman. Amy Friedman, amazing story as well. Also based in LA, interestingly. But she did a lot of work with the prison services and then ended up marrying an inmate. And she talks a bit about her life and her grandparents during the war and what she does now. And it's amazing. But what I was going to say, there are different strategies when people write books, and especially when they write anthologies. And some people actually charge people to be in a book, to be an author. And that's okay too. That's a different model. And those people that are paying to be in a chapter, they're doing it for various different reasons. And one may be that they want to leverage their chapter in terms of their business. So it's part of a marketing program. In my case, I talk to people who didn't necessarily want to be writers. They wanted to, through chatting about my vision, convince them to write really and to share their story. And everybody in the book has done so pro bono. And I haven't charged anybody a penny. And they've written pro bono because I've said to them, I want you to share your authentic story. So these people are sharing their lives, their stories. And it wasn't something that they necessarily thought about doing before I started having that conversation. So in my world, that makes it even more valuable because you're hearing these true life stories from people who, like I said, sort of reticently came along. I dragged them into the book.
You twisted their arm. I know you did. You had you have to be in my book. But it means that these are stories that may not ever have been told had you not created this sacred space for them to be told, and then and actioned it and facilitated it. And it's your vision, Val. I have to commend you on your vision. Your vision was so strong. And when you came to me, you had 42 authors, 5,000 words each. I was like, this is 3 books, not 1 book. But we managed to amalgamate it all together into your 3 themes: reimagine, rewire, retire. Can you just talk to those themes? Because a lot of people are reimagining their lives now. They're prioritizing, they're starting to move towards what it is that lights them up rather than what they think they have to do. And especially coming from Ireland, because I'm from Ireland, so I know the culture there, and people just get into jobs and they'll be there a lifetime, they get families, they get stuck there or whatever, and not until later on, but people are doing it a lot earlier now. So can you speak to those 3, reimagine, retire, or rewire, retire?
Yeah, of course. So reimagine, as I've defined it, is somebody who's thinking about a career path or a path in life. And then as they're perhaps in that path, they have loved it at the start. So a friend of mine, for example, was a nurse. She loved that caring work that she did. But as time went on, and I guess nursing didn't deliver on ongoing what she wanted out of life, she started to then get the opportunity. She got the opportunity and she changed, and she's now, I met her through Coca-Cola actually, and she became an executive coach in Coke, and she was a bloody good executive coach, and she trained in that area. So it's still a caring maybe role, but leveraging those skills in a different way. So I knew another girl who worked in the bank for years, up until her early 30s. And banking in Ireland, Karen, you'd probably agree, you got into banking, you stayed in the bank. It was great fun, very social. You could work your way up with banking exams, etc.
Do your hours.
Yeah, exactly. But then like that, she thought, well, actually, I don't really want to do this for the rest of my life. So she stepped off that, took a risk, stepped off it, put herself through college, and then became a counselor. But that meant that she had to step away from a big salary, a big career. So for me, it was very interesting. Like, what is that tipping point where you say, I'm going to make the change? Because many of us think about it and go, yeah, I think I'd like to do this or I'd like to do that. But how many actually do it? And now, since I've left coach, I'm now a business coach and also a life coach. And I love that insight of trying to help people to decide how are they going to live a happier life. You know, we only get one life. So what do you want to do with it? And what are all those dreams that you had as a child that maybe you haven't fulfilled? Or what are the dreams that are now coming into your life, or opportunities that you say, a lot of us suffer imposter syndrome. We think, I'm not good enough to do that. Oh, I just couldn't do that. And you know, what's the worst thing that can happen if we said, yes, let's give it a go? You know, we can always, there's no way, nobody's told us a one-way street. We can always go back to what we did, but actually let's go forward and just see the amazing things that can happen. So that's reimagine. You may be on one path in life and you've said, for whatever reason, I'm going to step off that and do something fundamentally different that's not related to the first path. Okay. Rewire is somebody like me. I pretty much have done similar things throughout my life, in that I've worked for fast moving consumer good companies. So I worked for Bailey's Cream Liqueur. I worked on Ambrosia. I worked on the great British brands of Bovril and Marmite. I've worked for Mars, all the Mars confectionery brands. I've also more recently, as we talked about, for Coca-Cola. And I've, throughout my career, I progressed through sales and marketing, commercial, and then I ran some of the businesses within Coke, which was a huge pleasure. But now, as I mentioned, I had a moment where the universes came together. I could take a voluntary redundancy. I went blind, and that was my pause and go, wow, you know, what do I want to do now? You know, I'm 55. What actually, getting on a little bit, what do I want to do? And that gave me the opportunity to step away from what I was doing, which I loved, by the way. I have nothing bad to say about it, but an opportunity came for me to explore other avenues. So for me, rewiring, I now do what I would call a portfolio career. I'm not retired. All my friends are like, why don't you just retire, go traveling, enjoy yourself? Look, you've got a bag of cash, go have fun. And I do have fun, but equally I want to use my brain and I want to do good in the world. Actually, it's a privilege for me now to try to do good. And we'll come on to talk about the charitable benefits from the book. So I have an eclectic bit of a career. I retrained as an executive and life coach. So I do some executive and life coaching. And then I also do a lot of pro bono work and charity work. And then I work on a couple of boards. So, for example, I'm on the board of Cricket Ireland, which is a voluntary position. I also do some work with Belong To, which is a organization which helps youth in terms of clarifying their identity and who they are and their gender and what they want in terms of, you know, gay, straight, whatever it may be, the mixture in between. So I do some work for them, etc. So I love the fact that now I've less pressure, I guess, financially, which allows me the ability to be able to do more for charity, more pro bono. But equally, more importantly, equally important, I can actually help people through my job in terms of coaching and life coaching to bring the book to life and help people in that reimagine phase and or any phase of their life, even facing into retirement. What will they do, etc. And how can they plan mindfully for that? And then the retirement section, well, retiring, I think we understand the word, but is retiring really retiring anymore? You've got so many people who say, actually, I'm fit, I'm active, I have an active mind, I've brilliant experience, life experience, and I want to give back in some way. And so that's the retirement section.
I can't ever imagine retiring fully, you know, if you're doing what you love and it fulfills you. So people are going for fulfillment now, aren't they, Val?
Exactly.
It's more fulfillment. They're going for more aligned with what their passions are. And they've experienced stuff, and it doesn't need to be a whole lifetime that they do that. Curiosity and things to give themselves permission to explore other avenues. Whereas years ago, you know, culturally and history, we would never have done that. You know, it's interesting. Just love watching how it has, and COVID had a lot to do with it. You know, that downtime changed people's perspectives. So let's talk about this charity, because it's so important, and I understand why it's so important to you, but can you share a little bit about supporting guide dogs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that I had gone blind in my right eye. I've always loved dogs. We were brought up with dogs, absolutely adore them. And I saw an ad which said that, look, you can help to raise a guide dog. So you can foster a puppy while it's waiting to go to its training. So essentially, there's a breeding with the guide dogs. They breed very specifically for active, intelligent dogs. And in so doing, then at 12 weeks old, the dog is allocated out to a foster family. And then they're with the foster family for about 12, 18 months. And then they go to, in Ireland anyway, they go to a training centre in Cork for about 6 months. And then they're allocated out to a vision impaired person. And if for whatever reason they don't pass their exams to be a fully guide dog, then they're given and allocated out to people on the spectrum, maybe perhaps people who suffer anxiety or anything else in terms of the spectrum. So I think it's an amazing charity. It's an amazing charity, not just in Ireland, but globally. And in terms of the guide dogs, I thought, okay, well, I still have a bit of a busy life and traveling a bit. I'm not sure that I can allocate a year of my life to minding these dogs. So I said, look, I'll do some holiday cover. So that's what I do. I sometimes mind guide dogs puppy when people go on holidays. And so I've been given some basic training in terms of the guide dogs, but that let me understand and start to get to know a bit more about guide dogs and the process of how they're provided to people, and also how they actually can change a person's life. So we had the book launch this week, as you know, and I got the guide dogs from Ireland. I got the organisation, a representative to come along and to present. But I also had a lady who had a little guide dog, Christine, and her guide dog, Effie. And Christine was blind from birth, and she talked about her life and her world being quite small. And then she was out one day with her mother, and her mother had arranged for her to get a guide dog, which is Effie. And she went out and her mum said, oh, I want you to come this way. We're doing, we're going for a walk over here. And she's like, why is my mum bringing me over there? And anyway, so she got introduced to Effie. And she described how Effie has changed her life and how Effie has opened up her world. She said she used to go into, if she was going in somewhere and somebody was leading her by the arm, you don't know where the door is. You don't know where the bathroom is. You don't know where the chair is to sit down. And so she said, Effie, for her, she called it a small thing. I think it's a huge thing.
Yes.
She said, Effie, for her, is winning the lotto.
Yes.
So she has won the lotto. This dog has opened up her world, and she's able to go out and be independent and to live her life as she wants to live it. It's just so incredibly powerful.
Things we take for granted every day, it's like, wow.
And, I was blind in my right eye, so I was only blind in one eye for 1 week. And I tell you the impact that it even had on my confidence, because my eye was blind, so I couldn't see people coming up from my right. And in 1 week I experienced my world becoming slightly smaller. Yeah. So we want to raise money for charity. So we've got two charities. One is Guide Dogs for the Blind, and that can be global. Obviously, we can raise money there's 9 different countries, 42 contributors. So as they're selling books in their countries, we will raise money to give money to the Guide Dogs for the Blind. In addition, we're also going to give some money to mental health charities. So whatever the mental health charities are within their countries. And the reason for that is, as we go through the book, there's some common threads. And one of the common threads actually is sometimes I've felt it, and many, many people, as they talk about their stories in the book, can suffer a bit of anxiety. Certain life events bring about anxiety in your life. And as anxiety for some of us builds, that can actually, if we don't talk to people and open up, which I believe now it's becoming much more acceptable, I guess, to say that we're talking to somebody, we're sharing our problems. But unfortunately for some of us, that goes, you can get into an area of depression, or, for example, only in the last week, we know somebody who's unfortunately died by suicide.
Yeah.
Last November, just pre-Christmas, the end of last year, another friend of ours, her husband died by suicide. So there is, unfortunately, people who need the services of these professional organizations, and they can tap into those services in terms of mental health. And I think that's really incredibly important. Our friends are there for us, but sometimes we need more experienced and people who can guide us through this so that we don't get to the extreme, so that we can catch it early and have the tools to be able to cope. And so part of
And
the
such an
book,
important conversation to have, Val, and the book can facilitate that as well, because there's a fine line, and if you need to keep ourselves above the line and keep ourselves fulfilled, which is the book discusses that a lot, so that whenever life happens, we don't fall below the line. So, and then those support services can.
And I think
it's amazing what you've done and how.
Thank you. I think if you're a square peg in a round hole and you're not living the life that you really want, well, that's not good for you internally. You're not internally aligned with what's going to make you happy. Maybe you've done something out of obligation. Maybe you're doing something because you feel like you're providing for your family, and that if you did something that you really liked, perhaps you wouldn't be able to provide as well. But actually, when you become your authentic self and you start to live the life you should, the universe just provides. It's amazing. So I'd encourage you to really think about, and you don't have to fundamentally change. Oh, I'm changing full-time to full-time somewhere else. You can just do a hobby that you haven't made time for. As part of the launch, I asked people to close their eyes, and I asked them to close their eyes for 10 seconds. Now, 10 seconds is not any amount of time. Usually when I'm coaching with people, I'll go through a process where we do an exercise on reflection in order to reflect on what we love, what we don't love, what we want to bring forward in our life. But I had 10 seconds in the launch, and I just said, look, close your eyes for 10 seconds. And now I want you to reconnect with you, whether it's a childhood dream or something in your life that you've gone, actually, I want to make this change.
Yeah.
And they did that for 10 seconds. And it's amazing, since, it's only a couple of days, but since the launch, a couple of people have reached out to me and said, thank you so much for giving me those 10 seconds. Here's the change I'm making. I was like, wow, that's intense.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? It's like a mindful moment just to visualize, and in that it activates something. Like your work is just so, like, that's phenomenal. And it will, like, just 10 seconds, how it can change your life and put you on a different trajectory. Oh, Val, just glorious stories. Of course, I knew we would go way over time, but I want to share down at the bottom, you're going to see scrolling down the bottom, www.com, create your best life. Do you recognize that lovely lady there with that gorgeous background? So this is the launch here, all these amazing photographs. You can go in and check out all of the launch, and you can see Val there with the book and support. She wants to raise 53,000 euros for a guide dog. I think that would be amazing. Here's our interview here, and all of the authors' names should be on there, but they're not right now. But you can see here that all across the world, this book is available. And if you want to grab the book, leave a review. All of that helps us get the word of this book out there into the world. So do just go and grab your copy today and share it with your neighbors. It's really good. Have those whispers, Chinese whispers, get across the world. That Val
somebody said to me, it's a great book to gift.
Yes.
It's not very expensive, but it's a great book to gift. Give people the gift of inspiring. Inspire yourself, inspire others. And at the same time, as you're helping yourself and others, you're helping two great charities. So what could be better?
We are going to finish up on that epic note. But before we go, is there anybody you want to thank, Val?
Well, I want to thank you. Thank you for bringing me through the journey and holding my hand through the process. I want to thank your great team. So Tracy, in terms of editing, I mean, she became my best friend around the world as we were up night and day doing this. And I want to thank the 42 contributors for sharing their authentic stories. And like some of them I pulled into it. So you really are getting, as you said, Karen, so eloquently, stories that would not have been told. And I'd like to thank you as the purchasers for helping us to spread the word, inspire other people, and help these charities.
Oh, that's Val's authentic self there, because I didn't prep her to say that. So well done, Val. Thank you everyone for watching. Now go and grab your copy. Send us your selfies and we'll give you a little bit of airtime on our channel. But bye guys. Thank you so much. Thanks,
so
Val.
much. Thank you.